Holy smokes, I think we're live. I got a bunch of emails saying we're live. I'm pretty sure we're live. AT, are you there?
Yes, it's a mad panic.
It is a mad panic. We woke up at 7 this morning to prepare for a show, and we're still mad panic beforehand. So this is good, man. This is really good. So welcome to week 5. In your face. We missed last week. We actually did a podcast last week. It was miscommunication. We couldn't get it edited. Then it was like, we're setting this show up for this week. So bottom line is
it was a lost podcast.
It was a lost podcast, but we did record our picks though. So we do have picks, which we're going to recap them later on in the show. But first things first, AT, the Oscars this past weekend, and I know how much you love the Oscars, but how about the boof at the end of the show? It totally set what's his name off the hook.
The best was the impromptu response by Jimmy Kimmel saying, "I blame Steve Harvey." The Miss America pageant and announced the wrong girl.
Right, the Miss Columbia.
I love that. That's the only time that I really, genuinely laughed at a joke from a liberal. Was that. That was a good line by Jimmy Kimmel. He saved the room because, frankly, I would have loved to see a bunch of spoiled hamburger meat drop out of the ceiling onto the entire group of power libs and Democrats in that room. It was so painful. It would have been a great scene right out of PCU, right onto the room. Like just throwing meat dumping on the whole room would have been great. But Kimmel saved the room for me for just a moment. Then I went back to making myself.
Oh man. Well, AT, I got a little surprise for you, and this is by request.
Great.
This is by request from a few Division I coaches and a couple friends of mine, but we're bringing it back. The game is called D2, D3, or MCLA.
Oh, yes.
All right. So and I believe this is Ash Wednesday, correct? So it's a religious, I guess, relatively holiday, whatever you want to call it.
That's a 3-letter word, Ash, not the 4-letter word with the H in front, right?
Ash Wednesday.
Got it. Good.
All right. So we're going to do All Saints schools for this.
Okay.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You got 8. Are you ready?
Is it safe to say that the requests for the return of this game came from everybody that's not a team that we're going to speak about in this?
That is very true. But it is a request that was given to me by somebody maybe in these divisions, which is
good.
Giving a little shout out here. But here it goes. You ready, AT?
Yeah.
All right. Number 1, St. Rose, D2, D3, or MCLA?
I'm going to say D3.
D2. Yeah. So I got to cross this one off. Number 2, St. Mary's College of Maryland. Now, to preface this, a lot of teams have club teams.
D3. D3.
It is D3.
Yes, I knew that. You didn't have to get into the fine print.
Well, the fine print is they actually have a club team, but the fine print is you always have to pick the team at the highest rank, highest thing. So if they have a D3 team, it's D3.
That's good clarification.
The next one is the easiest one, although St. Mary's College of Maryland seemed to be pretty easy for you. But St. Michael's, God bless Paul Schmoller.
That's D3.
No, wrong. D2. You ruined
Sorry.
it. Well, you got it wrong. You said D3 first. All right, here we go. To finish off the last 5, St. Ambrose.
MCLA.
D2.
All right.
All right, you got the St. Rose wrong too. St. Bonaventure.
Club.
It is MCLA. Nice work.
Yep.
St. Cloud State. St. Cloud State.
Club.
Nice, AT.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. St. Louis University.
D2.
Club. I got you on that. Yeah, I got you on that one. And Mount St. Vincent.
My buddy Matt Panetta was the coach there for like 2 weeks. I'm going to say that they are D3.
They are D3. Nice work.
Yes.
D3. Nice work. So there is our game.
Canucks, you out there?
Right.
He went. I think, in fact, what he did is I think he went from being the head coach at Mount St. Vinny's, because he brings a little Vinny Barbarino to the scene. He went right from that to he had to quit because he got a promotion to manage his own fantasy football team in our league this winter.
I like that. We did promote him in the fantasy football world. So that is the game. If you were following along at home, hopefully
that was like when Kelleher got promoted from Team 6 at ECLC to Manhattan. That was my favorite. Nice job, Kelleher. Sick W yesterday, you sick kid.
Triple or double OT, Parker Giarratana. But so there it is. If you were following along at home, AT was 50%. If you were better than AT, let us know. So AT, we got our games from this past weekend. We got Coach and Player of the Week. And let's start with Coach of the Week. Your Coach of the Week. Who is he?
There were a couple of guys. I thought potentially Jim Nagel at Stony Brook with a huge win over Brown, which is tough for me to say. Yep. But listen, that was very, very impressive. The other one, which actually ended up as first runner-up for me, and probably the only time he was ever runner-up in anything in his life, and that's Coach Petramala down at Johns Hopkins, reversing a trend of string of losses 10 years in a row, I think, or more to the Heels to go down to North Carolina and beat them 13-5 in Chapel Hill, put him right in the running. But I got to go with New Canaan Rams class of 1987 long stick midi, Mike Murphy at UPenn.
Great pick.
Right? Murphy was an assistant under Dom Starsia at Brown for 1 year and then went down to Virginia for 5 years under Dom. And you have to think was in the conversation to get the head coaching job at Virginia. Remember that Brown beat Penn last year, I believe, 16-2 in Philadelphia. Snowball. And so you gotta think that Mike Murphy felt pretty good in anticipation of his handshake with LT after knocking off the upstart Virginia Cavs at home. What a W. My in-your-face Coach of the Week, Michael Joseph Poltergeist Murphy. Nice job, Murphy.
Those are great picks, and I concur with all of that. My Coach of the Week, or actually the runner-up Coach of the Week, is Ryan Poley. He's currently sitting 5-0 right now with a win last night over Bryant. Huge win over Bryant.
It's a great win. I thought I had Bryant winning that game in a trap game.
I mean, that's Bryant's go-to is 100% Tuesday night games and ruining somebody's season on a Tuesday night. They've done it multiple times. Yep. And for Boston to go in there last night, now it was a first home game, so I'm sure the guys were fired up. Night game in Boston, blah, 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 blah. Great. Ryan Poley's got his team 5-0 on top of the fact that he beat Navy this past weekend 8-7 in the opener. And I remember
finish.
It was
Did you see the finish of that?
It was 10 seconds, backdoor cut, boom, goal. Awesome.
Well, they had the ball. The ball was out at their goal line, the end line.
Right.
Behind
their
their
get
goal
it down the
with
field.
11 seconds left.
Yes. It was awesome. And for that team to have that composure kind of speaks to the leadership they're finally starting to get. The teams are now getting used to winning. They're learning how to deal with success. They're learning how to deal with tighter games. I mean, we had mentioned before that playing Navy as your first Patriot in-season game is a tough draw. And
he's a great coach, man.
He's getting it done.
Did BU start the same year as Marquette and Richmond and High Point and all those teams?
Absolutely.
That team's arguably the best of all of them. I mean, they didn't knock off Denver or Duke, but Poley's just done an incredible job of winning close games. So that's a great runner-up. He's a runner-up, right?
He's the runner-up. I mean, it was a tough call, but I did want to mention him. The second one, the winner, is Brian Breck from Rutgers. Now, this is not because of his 12-5 win over Wagner or his 8-3 win over Fairfield. I think it's just more so of him being able to deal with early season injuries to Charlene Beatties. That's a huge hit for that program.
And Trasolini, the midfielders are stud.
Midfielder, right. And for him to still continue to put out a product out there that is very, very good. On top of the fact that he's going to be going into a buzzsaw in both Brown and Stony Brook coming up, but now the Big Ten coming up soon as well. But get this. They have a win over Army 12-10 early in the season.
Yeah,
that's going to be huge. It's going to be huge later on this year.
Especially with Army beating Cuse last week.
Exactly. And Army, as we know, is a great team. So speaking to what Brian Breck's built so far, I'm going to give Brian Breck my in-your-face Coach of the Week. AT.
Well deserved.
Who is your Player of the Week?
Hard to not look at Mac O'Keefe with 8 Gs as a freshman. Is he going to have 9 Gs this week? I mean,
it's going to be
who's covering him? Who's covering Mac? I mean, jeez, unbelievable. I mean, I can't get over it. 24 goals in 4 games.
It is.
So BJ Prager, who was one of the best
Princeton.
One of the best crease guys to ever play the sport, works with my brother, and they were talking last week. And BJ said that he had in his freshman year the Princeton Lacrosse freshman scoring season record at 26 goals, right? And he's one of the most prolific goal scorers in the history of college lacrosse, right? And he had 26 in the season when he was a freshman. And Mac O'Keefe has 24 after 4 games. Slow down, Mac. Okay? Slow down, fella. So he's my runner-up, but I've got to go back to Philadelphia. 16 saves, 10 goals allowed.
Big
Reed
game.
Junkin
Big
for the Quakers.
Game.
Clean sweep. I can't believe it because I hate Penn. Just as much as I hate Yale. But you know what?
Yale is way deeper on the hatred scale. Way deeper.
Different. They're different. It's a different layer of hate. It's different reasons for hate. But I go with Reed Junkin. He's playing great, and he was the preseason Ivy League goaltender for first team, and proved that has proved to this point. I mean, he's got a stiff test this weekend with Penn State coming up, but he's proved that he's a strength on a team that's extremely strong. And credit our boy Quint with being a huge advocate for the Quakers early, because they are showing themselves worthy of that adulation. So I got Reed Junkin.
I think he was. I mean, I'm still blocked, so I don't really know what he writes and what he doesn't write. But yes, I've heard that he's been a big fan of the Quakers this year, which is great. My Player of the Week, I got a couple runner-ups, 2 runner-ups. The first one coming from the same game you're talking about, Tyler Dunn with 3 goals. In a big win. Penn's, I believe, first top 10 victory, at least for Mike Murphy, which is huge, and puts them into the top 10. Awesome job. Tyler Dunn, 3 goals in a big-time game. Second runner-up, Cole Johnson from Army, 3-1.
He's stud.
Underrated. Versus Q's. Very underrated on a very underrated team. Army doesn't get enough respect out there in terms of the polls. I think
problem is they keep playing Rutgers, otherwise they would. Nice job, Brett.
Very, very true. And they have to go through the Patriot League. So the games, just because the number of games you have to play in the Patriot League doesn't allow you to play nearly as many out of the league. You got to play in 8 in-league games. So you don't get to see Army play some of those teams that you'd like them to play. But either case, Army is very, very underrated. Expect to see them going long through the season on the heels of a guy like Cole Johnson, who's scoring 3-1 versus Q's in the Dome. Very hard place to play, as we've stated multiple times before. But my Player of the Week, it would have been Cole Johnson, by the way, until last night. Dartmouth gets their first win of the season under Richie Loftus's 5 goals against UVM. Huge game for the Big Green out there in Hanover. So my in-your-face Player of the Week, Richie Loftus, 5 goals. Huge game, huge momentum swing going into a weekend where they need to pick up yet another win. So great job by Callahan getting the squad on board. I get to finally talk about Dartmouth when Brown lost and they sucked. So I get to talk about Dartmouth, which I'm pumped about.
Embrace it.
I am. So good luck to the boys.
Is a stud, though. He is a stud, and I don't know what the deal was against Stony Brook, but he was 3-1 in his first game against Canisius, I think it was. Right, he scores 5 goals in this
Sacred
game.
Heart, you mean? Sacred Heart.
No, yeah, Sacred Heart. I don't know why he didn't play against Sacred Heart, but the fact is, obviously, with 5 goals, he made a statement that you better keep him on the field, coach, because you need goals, and he's giving them to you. So keep him on the field.
He's doing a great job. 5 goals. Hopefully gets another 5 this weekend. We're going to take a little break. We have negotiated an agreement with Lax Vegas Lines to produce their lines first look. And we're going to give that first look after the break. But we're excited about this. We're going to do this at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday every week.
Love it.
And we're really appreciative of those guys. If you haven't already, check them out at Lax Vegas Lines. That's all they tweet out is just lines. So you're just going to get a bunch of lines from a bunch of requests from different people. It's good and entertaining Twitter handle to follow, and it makes some of the games that might be a little lopsided interesting because they put a spread to them. So
they do all the games or just the top 25 games?
They just do the top 20 games. Although I did see, I think I saw number 21 BU in the lineup. So I think that I don't know. It's top 20. That's what they say. And then they gave us the lines for the next games this weekend, top 20, I believe. I hope they are.
And they take requests? Is that what it is? Because I have seen games on there that haven't been top 20 games.
Yeah, you can DM them, you can tweet at them for a requested game, and then they'll pump out a line at some point after that, it seems like. But a good handle to follow. If you haven't already, give them a follow. But we'll be back. We're going to give Sisu, our sponsor, a little shout out here. Hold on tight.
At Sisu, we take a very scientific approach to making sure our technologically advanced, doctor-developed, scientifically backed, industry-changing mouthguards are the most protective, lightest, talkable, breathable, comfortable, drinkable, removable mouthguards on the planet to guarantee you're protected. No matter what comes your way, the Sisu Next Gen. Sisu, talk, breathe, drink.
Give us a recap of last week and a summary to date. We are on week 5.
Week 5. So after week 4, going into week 4, I was overall 49-33, just 2 points ahead of you at 47-35. Week 5, I'm sorry, week 4 was not good to you, Ryan.
No, it wasn't.
But you're a nice person.
Yes,
that counts.
I am. I try to be.
Week 5. I was 20-14, right? And you were 16-18, sub 500.
Oh man, I lost. I quote unquote lost money.
So rock bottom. And so the overall standings are 69-47. I'm 69-47. You are 63-53.
Oh.
So I'm 6 points better than you. My rock bottom calls stick out. Brown, I had in rolling. I think I said they were going to win by 10, and they got rinsed. Although Mike Daly is a stud, and he's going to get these guys back. They're going to beat this week. That's a guarantee. And so that was a bad call by me. You picked Carolina, which was a bad call by you.
Although I did say that the game was going to be a blowout. One of the two teams is going to blow them out. So
yeah. I think Carolina will be there at the end of the year. I still think that they're going to be a Final Four team.
No, you said national championship. You said they're going to win it again.
But that's inclusive, Ryan. Final Four is just prelude. You can get there to win it, right?
Yeah, but it seems like you're fading back on a little bit of confidence on UNC. You said they were going to double up.
UNC, what they do is they develop over the course of the season, right? That's what they do. Look at them last year. They lost to UMass. They were 3-3. I saw Joe Brash and Metzi and those guys. They practiced at GFA following their loss to UMass. And what did they do? They came back to win a national championship. Joe Brash. So don't count the heels out. Count them in.
I'm not counting them out yet, but I'm definitely. Actually, I did count them out. I said they weren't going to make the ACC tournament. So
I said they'd win the national championship. Actually, they'd win the national championship.
We're going opposite ends on that one. Keep going.
Right.
What were my bad calls? Do you have my bad calls? Or no?
Your bad calls were definitely UNC. Yeah. You had Marquette, which was an awful call. I had Richmond. I got 2 points. You got none. Yes. We both had Maryland in the over, which we both got 0 on. I had BU in the under, which was 2 points. You had Navy, which was 0. You had the over. You had.
I had who?
You had Stony Brook in the over.
Yes.
Which was 2 points. So that was a good call by you. Other than that, I had Georgetown in the over. You had Towson in the under. That was 2 points for me, none for you.
Yep.
So
it was a good week for you. It was a good week for you.
It was a good week for me. Listen, I 20-14 is a solid week. 16-18 is an area of opportunity for improvement for you.
Yes, I will improve this week, and let's get to it, AT.
All right.
We've got games tonight. Today, if you're watching this on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or listening to it on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, this is a Wednesday show. So the games tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've got an Albany versus UMass, UVA versus High Point, and Towson versus Loyola, AT.
Yes, correct.
So let's start at the top. We got number 15 Albany at home in Albany versus UMass, favored by 4 goals. The over-under here is 22. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are I need to turn to the skid and give more credit to Scott Marr and his program. The last 2 weeks, I picked Syracuse to crush Albany in the first week, and then I picked Drexel to beat Albany last week. I am not going to make that same mistake again. Albany is for real. Scotty Marr, I apologize. I still haven't recovered since you scored 5 goals. Or may have been 6 goals on the Needham Needler in the 1986 Yorktown New Canaan High School game, held on Rainy Sachs Junior High School field. So I went against you the first 2 weeks, but I'm going to reverse that trend this week. Albany has too much offense. They are really, really scary. And UMass is on a collision with the rock bottom bowl is what they are. So I got Albany rolling here. I got Albany and the over.
I normally actually would have taken UMass in this scenario, but I feel like a Tuesday or Wednesday game sets up perfect for Albany, where they can just run and gun, play the style that they like to play.
At Albany, too.
At Albany. This might even be their home opener. I'm not so sure they've had a home game yet. So that's exciting in itself. So I'm going to take Albany in the 4 points, and I'm going to take the over. I think that – did you take the over or the under, AT?
Over.
Yeah, I'm going to take the over as well. There's a possibility that Albany might cover the over themselves. But if there isn't, I feel like it's not going to be within 4 goals. I feel like UMass actually wins. If there isn't, but I'm not picking that at all. That's not where my pick is going. Albany -4 myself and the over. Next up, you got number 9 UVA at home in Charlottesville against John Torpy and his High Point Panthers, favored 5 goals. The over-under here is 24.5. What do you got?
My concern is High Point's lack of face-off success. I spoke to Pat this week about a recruit that's in the area, and it sounded like they got beaten all facets of the game against Maryland. And I had picked High Point against Maryland to cover last week. I didn't think that they would beat them, but they did play them really, really tough last year, and I thought that they would cover last week, and they got blown out. And marrying that up with the fact that High Point beat Virginia last year, and even though it was under a different regime with Dom Starzia coaching the Cavs, I think the players on UVA are going to remember this game. There's no way Lars Tiffany, after coming off of a loss at UPenn last weekend, is going to allow a UVA team to come in and not respect their next opponent, and especially not respect an opponent that beat them last year, even though they are very well coached. I just think that there's too many intangibles going in UVA's favor. And this week, I think that they're going to control the middle of the field. They're going to control the ground balls. And I think they're going to be way too much for High Point. So as much as I want to pick Torp and Pat, I'm not going to do it because I don't want to chance losing 2 points here against you. So I am going to go with UVA and the over because I think they're going to be running hard as they create their identity in 2017. I got UVA and the over.
For the exact same reasons that you just mentioned, the face-off being an issue, one of the biggest advantages that UVA has is their transition off the face-off. We all know that they have transition in the middle of the field off a shot save or a caused turnover, but these guys have massive face-off transition game, and it could pose some serious problems for High Point. With that being said, I'm going to go with High Point on this one, covering 5 goals. And I'm actually going to take I'm going to take the under here. I have a feeling that John Torpy is going to throw out, much like what Penn threw out, a zone defense against Virginia. And with that being said, it's going to slow down the pace. Can they slow down the face-off transition is the biggest question. If they can't, they're going to lose by 10. And so from those two standpoints, I'm going to trust that John Torpy is going to get it done. So I think they're going to cover, maybe lose by 4 or less. I don't think they're going to win, but I will take the under on 24.5. If I'm right on the under, it's simply because they couldn't score enough and UVA blows them out. So at least I'll maybe catch one.
I hope High Point wins, but we'll see.
Here. We'll see. Next up, arguably game of the week, but it's not the game of the week. It's a Wednesday night game. Towson, Loyola, number 13 Towson, is at home in Unitas Stadium versus number 11 Loyola. Loyola is favored by 1.5 goals. The over-under here is 19.5. Is Towson's defense that good to keep the over-under that low, AT?
This is a really good line by Lax Vegas Lines because Loyola's going to win the game. Last year, Towson beat Loyola, and I think it was 12-10, something like that. But I think that Towson's lost a little bit on the defensive end. You know, Nans is a phenomenal coach, obviously, and they're going to eventually return to form. But I think that they lost a lot of personnel that's going to be tough to replace in this game early in the year. They beat Georgetown, and I thought that Georgetown would come back and play a better game against Towson. I picked them last week against Towson. I wasn't sure that they were going to win, but I did think that they would cover, and they did. They played well. And I just think that Loyola is a much scarier team than Georgetown. And Loyola is playing with a chip on their shoulder, given their 1-goal loss to Virginia, given their 1-goal loss in overtime to Hopkins. They obviously blew up Lafayette last week. And I think even though they're laying 1.5 in this game, I think that Loyola is going to come in. I see them winning like 13-8, something like that. So I'm going to take Loyola in the over.
As much as I do agree with you with the losses they have on the defensive end, it doesn't seem like they've lost really much, given what Towson's performance over the last few games. I'm going to go the opposite again here. I'm going to take Towson, and I'm going to take Towson to win outright. Alex Woodall at the Faceoff X has been the differentiator for Towson in making up for the lack of, or the loss of defense on the other end, because they don't have to seize nearly as many possessions.
Graham Savio, he's got a big battle with Graham Savio.
He does. But at the same time, if you're going to go 50-50 on the Faceoff X, this game's going to be a slow game. 19.5, I do see that, I think it's going to be 10-10-ish. You know what I mean? So I do see
Yeah.
the over here, but I'm going to take Towson in the victory, especially on a Wednesday night at home. I like them too much here, so I'm going to take Towson, and I'm going to take the over here. And I know you have the over as well. 19.5 is just a little too slow, a little too low for me. Now we're getting into the lines that no one has. These are the lines that no one has. So if you're on the show, if you're a degenerate gambler with your friends, I guess this
Write them down. Right.
This is the only reason why you're on the show, I guess. But right now, we're going to release the lines for this weekend. So let's start with what they gave us. Number 3, Hopkins, going to New Jersey to play Princeton. Johns Hopkins is favored by 4.5. The over-under here is 23, AT. What do you think here?
I think 4.5 is a low line. I'm definitely going Johns Hopkins in this line. The over-under, I think, is spot on. Listen, Hopkins just has too much. You know, they have too many midfielders. They have a goalie that's playing on the top of his game. They've got an identity offensively with 6 studs and another 2 lines of mids behind them. I just see them having way too much offense. They're clearing the ball at 90% plus. And they just are – they seem like a national championship caliber team right now.
They do.
And Joel Tinney changes them. The maturity of Shaq Stanwyck, he's not a point hunting, which makes their offense scary. You know, he could score 5 goals in the first quarter, and he might not score a goal for 2 games, and he seems good with that, which is the sign of a true team-first leader. And I just think that Hopkins is a team that, after being down, the last couple years, I think is arguably the top team in the country right now. They really are. Mm-hmm. Do they score enough, both teams? Does Princeton score enough to get to the over? I can see Hopkins scoring 15 goals. I can see him scoring 18 goals. And I like the Princeton goalkeeper, but I just don't think that they can hang man-to-man. And I don't know when the last time that we've felt that Princeton doesn't have enough talent to hang man-to-man, but I just don't see this game even being close. I like JHU, and I think JHU scores a ton of goals. Michael Sowers is a stud, one of the best young attackmen in the country for Princeton. Courier, their midfielder, is also a stud. They'll score, 8 goals, 10 goals, something like that. But I think closer to 8. I can see it like 17-8 or 16-8. I got Hopkins in the over.
I'm not gonna go against you this one, although I do think that Mataraz is gonna have his issues with Zach Curry at the faceoff X. And
it's not. It's Bonafini's the one that faces off from him. They put Courier on the wing.
I did notice that at the end of the game, though, against Marist, they started putting Courier back at the faceoff X. So and I think they're doing that simply to save Courier for the long haul of 4 quarters, which is tough to do. In either case, they just don't have an answer right now anywhere on the field. Again, Michael Sowers is that next level attackman that Princeton needs in the next 4 years, but not right now. Certainly not with Joel Tinney's bringing to the table for Hopkins and the momentum he's bringing for and it's amazing just what one player can do. And everyone's complaining about the early recruiting, but here's the deal. Joel Tinney is that one guy. And that one guy can potentially bring you a national championship, and that's what Johns Hopkins is looking at right now. I also have Johns Hopkins -4.5, and I have the over as well. I do think Princeton will score enough goals, and we all know that Johns Hopkins is going to score enough as well. Number 17, Ohio State, going to Milwaukee to play Marquette, who's now unranked. The line on this one is OSU favored by 1.5. The over-under here is 19, which is an interesting over-under, but it makes sense, I guess, based on the scores of these two teams over the last few weeks. AT, what do you think here?
I've criticized OSU for having a lack of offensive punch, and I still think that applies. I'm not blown away by that. I do think that they're going to win this game. They're playing Marquette at home. Marquette is a well-coached defensive team, even though they got pounded 9-2 by Richmond. They only let up 9 goals. I mean, it's not that many goals.
Right.
So I think the fact that I'm not in love with OSU's offensive production. They're traveling to Marquette. Marquette didn't play well last week against a very, very good Richmond team, maybe a top 10 team. And they're a defensively minded team. I like OSU in the under here. I can see OSU winning this game something like 11-6, something like that. So I like OSU in the under.
I don't disagree with you at all on this one. I do like OSU. I think there's a slight advantage here with Marquette at home. I think it could be a one-goal game, but I would say it's not. I think that OSU is going to go in there. I think it's going to be a really low-scoring game. I'd actually say it's less than the score that you said. I think it's going to be like a 9-6.
Could be.
Just a really, really low-scoring game. I've got OSU covering that 1.5, and I would pick the under on this one as well. Next up, potential game of the week, but not game of the week. We got an in-state rivalry, state championship going on here. Penn versus Penn State at Penn State in State College. I'm helping out with the team this year for Penn. Exciting buzz coming out of the program at Penn. Mike Murphy getting in your face game coach of the week, which is huge. I'll deliver his award. I'll deliver his award for
his McDonald's cheeseburger.
It could be or that the street
scrape
meat
the
on
onions
corner.
off. Scrape the onions off. Disgusting.
But obviously I'm going with Penn here. I got confidence in the team, of course. But AT, what are your thoughts here? The game line is Penn pick'em.
Yeah.
And the over under is 24. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that Mike Murphy was able to slow down Virginia's offense coming into the game last week against Virginia. I would have thought that they wouldn't have been able to do that. I picked Virginia in that game. And so certainly Mike Murphy, as a defensive player himself and as a defensively minded coach, he's going to come up with a plan to slow down Penn State. Does he play a zone again? He might. And, but there's no question that he is going to be the toughest challenge for the young Penn State offense today. Chris Santangelo did a great job facing off, particularly down the stretch of that game last week, winning a lot forward from what I saw. But I think Chris Santangelo is going to get beat this week against Gerard Arcieri. I think that he's arguably the best guy in the whole country, Gerard Arcieri. And so I think Penn State's going to control the faceoffs. I think statistically they'll win that battle, which may allow them to win the overall ground ball battle. But I just think that Penn's individual components on defense, I think Mike Murphy is a great scheme coach. And I think that Penn is going to be the first team to slow Penn State down this year and frustrate Mac O'Keefe, Grant Ament, and the other sensational Penn State underclass offensive players. So I like Penn in this game. I also think that part of playing a great defense is being deliberate on offense. And I think even though Penn is dynamic on offense, I think they realize that, a game that goes up and down and up and down, up and down probably doesn't allow Penn to utilize part of its game plan. And that is to, I think, win a lower scoring game against a team that proved it can run with anybody offensively. So I've got Penn and the under in this game.
That's a great one. We'll move on to the next one. Number 13, Towson, going to UMBC down the street to them. Towson is favored by 4.5. The over-under here is 20. What are your thoughts here?
We spoke a little bit about Towson before, and Ryan Moran had a great win last week, his first win as a head coach. So congratulations, Rhino. That's a sick win.
Yep.
But I just don't think Towson is going to allow them to win back-to-back games. Towson doesn't score a lot of goals, but I think they're going to be able to hold UMBC down. So I like Towson to cover 4.5, and I like the under 20. So I got Towson in the under.
Yeah, this one's an easy one for me too. I also think they're going to be at the under. Towson's defense and face-off control is going to be too much for UMBC. It is good to see Ryan Moran pick up his first win, but they're running into a very, very tough team in Towson. Towson, I'm taking the points, and I'm taking the under as well. I have like a 10-5 type game. Lafayette at West Point, number 16 Army. Army's favored by 6.5. The over-under here is 20, which is really weird. Probably because they don't think Lafayette's going to score, I guess, at all. But AT, what do you think here?
This is easy to me. I mean, Army minus 6.5. I think Army is going to cover that in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Lafayette's in trouble, and they're playing a team that's going to be tougher than them at West Point. Army's coming off of a 14-goal outburst against Syracuse. Army's going to keep this going, and they are going to continue to play fast. They're going to win all the faceoffs. They're going to empty the bench, and they're going to score 18-plus goals. I see, again, 18-5, 20-5, something like that. I got Army in the over.
I'm going to take Army for sure in this, but I'm actually going to take the under. Weirdly, I think that Lafayette's not going to score enough, and I don't think Army's going to score enough either. For those who think this is going to be a blowout, it probably will be. But the thing is, this is a league game. This is an important game. So Army's not taking this lightly. A one slip to a Lafayette team, and all of a sudden they're in jeopardy of not making a Patriot League tournament with such a great league. So expect Army to punch Lafayette in the face, but I don't think it gets to 20. I have like a 14-3 or something like that. So that's my pick. Holy Cross goes to Loyola in another Patriot League game. Loyola, number 11 in the country. They're basing this off of early lines, obviously, because they don't have the results from the Towson game. But Loyola -5 here. The over-under is 22. What do you think, AT?
It was good to see Holy Cross come back and win their first game of the year last week. I think they won 14-8. But I just think that Loyola has too much. Loyola's going to win the faceoffs. Graham Savio is going to control the ball. I think Holy Cross is going to have a tough time hanging with them on the offensive end. I think Patrick Spencer is going to go off. And I think Loyola is going to be playing with an offensive chip on their shoulder for the rest of the season, given the frustrating start. So to me, I think that even if it's close at halftime, and I think Judd will have Holy Cross, I think it'll still be a game at halftime. I really do. But I just think Loyola is going to end up opening it up down the stretch. So I like Loyola here. I think Holy Cross will score some goals, but I think I'll take Loyola in the over. I like 22 is a good number by Las Vegas Lines, but I like the over. I think Loyola is just going to have too much. I do think Holy Cross scores some goals enough to cover the over. So I got Loyola in the over.
I'm going to go against you here. I'm going to take the over. I will take the over, but I'm going to go Holy Cross covering 5 goals. This is too important of a game for Holy Cross. Loyola's coming off a short week since they're playing tonight. I think that Holy Cross's 10-man is going to cause a little bit of issues. It's also going to slow the game down. So from that standpoint, throwing a 10-man slows the game down. You're going to look at a little bit disorganized. Judd will take his time. He's got a very disciplined offensive system. He's going to take his time on the offensive end, all playing into his favor. I think they're going to have to score enough goals. I don't know what the faceoff X is going to stand for both teams. I think Loyola is going to dominate that area, which means Holy Cross is going to have to pick it up, in terms of pace. How are the two goalies going to perform? This is a Patriot League game. And it's a big one. But I do have Loyola winning this. I think 5's a little too much. I'm going to take Holy Cross. I'm going to take the over.
I like it.
Next up, we have number 19 Brown. We're going number 18. Which, are we doing the Brown game or the Stony Brook game, AT?
Brown game.
Brown game. Number 19 Brown versus number 14 Rutgers in New Jersey. Rutgers is favored by 1.5. Your boys are the underdog in this one. 28 AT is the over-under. 28.
Listen, I like this line that they created. I understand why it is what it is. I think that Brown underestimated Stony Brook, but I think the biggest issue for Brown was clearly their goaltending. Freshman goalie,
It's not Jack
backup
Kelly.
goalie. No, it's not. They saved 30% of the shots that were taken, and they were really exposed. And Rutgers, I'm not sure, isn't as dynamic as Stony Brook, and they play fast too. But I think that was an aberration last week for Brown and their defense. They've got too many great players, and obviously their offense speaks for itself. I'm not concerned about that. But I think Brown snaps back in a big, big way. I think Ted Ottens, Larkin Kemp, Alec Tullip, those guys control the ball in the middle of the field. I think that Brown's going to get a bounce-back performance from their freshman goaltender, provided that Coach Daly starts him again, which I'm sure he will. And while Rutgers, I have a ton of respect for Brian Breck and what they've done, and they're going to push it and they're going to run, and it's going to be a super high-scoring game. I see Brown winning this game outright, and I can see it being about 17-15 because of the respect I have for Rutgers' offense. I will say I was a little surprised. I didn't think Brown's defense, just due to the personnel they have, was capable of giving up that many goals. But when you get a goaltender that is, new to college lacrosse and let's face it, that position, you can get exposed from time to time. It's happened to every goalie at some point, but I do think he's going to bounce back. He's simply too good, and I think Brown has too much faith in him, and I got too much faith in Brown. So I like Brown in the over.
I'm gonna go the exact opposite, I'll take the over for sure. I think this is going to be a great game. It's going to be a lot of goals, but I just think there are too many freshmen on the field for Brown. I think that you're playing a system that's going to cause, Rutgers is going to cause too many turnovers, or Brown is going to create too many unforced turnovers, and Rutgers is going to capitalize. They have too many experienced players on the team. I'm going to take Rutgers at 1.5, and I'm going to take the over, but I don't see Brown getting out of their rut quite yet, and I see Rutgers continuing to roll. You're going to have a prepared Brian Breck going into this, and, Brown's not doing anything new. I mean, they're not, reinventing the wheel in terms of playing fast. They've just got to try to play faster, better than others. And I think Rutgers right now is playing fast, and they're playing well. And
they are.
For that
really
reason, I'm going to take Rutgers in at least a 2.
I'm pumped. I'm pumped that Brown gets to come back and play at Rutgers. Probably the best out of conference team on their schedule, at a time when Rutgers is playing so well. I'll bet you if you asked the Brown players, and I know if you asked the Brown staff, they would say that this is the perfect type of opponent for them to bounce back. They were humbled last week. And so to have to go down to Rutgers and play a blue-collar team after getting embarrassed on their home field against Stony Brook, I don't think you can write a better script for everybody that wants Brown to win this game. So, but listen, I understand why you pick it. And if I wasn't a Brown fan, I may pick Rutgers as well, but I'm certainly biased. I got no problem saying that, but I think Brown bounces back and wins this game.
Number 18, Stony Brook in the island versus Fairfield. The line here is 4.5. Stony Brook is favored. 22.5 is the over-under. Interesting game here. Stony Brook coming off an obviously big win against Brown, but are they for real? I mean, that's really the question here. Are they for real? And is 4.5 too much for a Fairfield team that is struggling a little bit here? AT, what do you think?
Listen, my ass still hurts from last week, right? I've got Stony Brook lacrosse stickers all over the bottom of my back. And so there's no question that Stony Brook is for real. They certainly got my attention with that win. They certainly can put up offense. And the other side of it is Fairfield seems like they can't do anything offensively outside of, a game where they beat Bucknell, I think 14-13 or something like that, beat them by a 1-goal game. Fairfield's been oddly extremely low scoring. And so to me, for them traveling all the way out to Stony Brook, I don't think this sets up well for Fairfield. I like Stony Brook, and the fact that Fairfield is so low scoring, I know they have a good goalie. They were able to hold Rutgers, I think, down to 9 goals, and that's definitely a low number for Rutgers. I think that I think that they're going to do a pretty good job of holding Stony Brook down, but they're not going to cover 4.5. I like Stony Brook and the under here. So That's it. That's my pick. Stony Brook in the under.
I'm going to take Stony Brook here as well, 4.5, but I'm going to take the over on 22.5. I think that's just going to be too many goals from the Stony Brook side. If they can put up 25 against Brown, they can certainly put up 15 plus against a Fairfield team, and I do think that Fairfield scores enough. But so that's the only reason I'm taking the over. But I do have a Stony Brook team that is turning the corner, it seems like, especially after the first couple games here. So I have...
You got Stony Brook in the over?
Yep, I have Stony Brook minus 4.5, and I have over on 22.5. AT, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to give Sisu Mouthpieces a big shout out here. We'll be right back. Maximize your comfort.
At Sisu, we take a very scientific approach to making sure our technologically advanced, doctor-developed, scientifically backed, industry-changing mouthguards are the most protective, lightest, talkable, breathable, comfortable, drinkable, remoldable mouthguards on the planet to guarantee you're protected. No matter what comes your way, the Sisu Next Gen. Sisu, talk, breathe, drink. At Sisu, we take a very scientific approach to making sure our technologically advanced, doctor-developed, scientifically backed, industry-changing mouthguards are the most protective, lightest, talkable, breathable, comfortable, drinkable, remoldable mouthguards on the planet to guarantee you're protected. No matter what comes your way, the Sisu Next Gen. Sisu, talk, breathe, drink. At Sisu, we take a very scientific approach to making sure our technologically advanced, doctor-developed, scientifically backed, industry-changing mouthguards are the most protective, lightest, talkable, breathable, comfortable, drinkable, removable mouthguards on the planet to guarantee you're protected. No matter what comes your way, the Sisu Next Gen. Sisu, talk, breathe, drink.
We're back in. We got Towers rebooted.
Yes.
For all those out there for the live show. We've got a few games left. We're at about 58 minutes or so, AT, so we're going to be quick for the last ones. But so far, so good. We've got number 15 Albany going to Ithaca to play Cornell at 1 p.m. this Saturday. Albany's favored by 4.5 goals. The over-under here is 24.5. Can Cornell score enough goals to make it on the over against Albany? AT, what do you think here?
I'm concerned. Cornell, I thought, would be doing better than they are. I know that they're young. I thought Jeff Teat would allow them to get to sort of 10 goals every single game. That's a lot of responsibility to put on a freshman. But let's face it, if he's on the cover of these magazines and he's, regarded as the top recruit in the country, you got to think, he can do that sort of thing. Certainly Michael Sowers is doing it down at Princeton, and, Jared Bernhardt at Maryland. But they're struggling right now. Albany, however, is not struggling. They're playing really well. And so I think Albany is going to make up for Cornell's lack of offensive production here. I see Albany lighten up 4.5. That's going to be no problem on the cover. 24.5 goals. Does Cornell score 10 goals? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm going to take Albany, and I'm going to take the under. I just think 24.5 is a lot of goals, and I'm not convinced that Cornell is going to be able to throw up 10 goals. I think I just don't like where Cornell is right now, and I'm shocked by it. But I got Albany in the under.
I've got Albany. I've got the over on this one, though. I do think that it's going to be a very high-scoring game for Albany, and I think enough of a high-scoring game for Cornell. I could see like a 16-10 win here, and I see Cornell scoring late in this game. I could even see 18 goals by Albany in this game. I just think that the face-off X is a serious issue for Cornell after having such success in years past, and I still think that they're trying to figure themselves out offensively and defensively. And so with that, I've got Albany minus 4.5, but I've got the over, AT. I'll take the over. Bryant at number 6 Yale. Hated Yale. Yale right now is favored by 3 goals. The over-under here is 22.5. What do you think here, AT?
You know what? I would have thought that Bryant would have been a trap game for BU, and credit BU for finding a way to get that done. But Bryant has good players, and they're a well-coached team. But Andy Shea getting his team to rally back from being in the hole 11-6 and being in it all the way into the final possession against Maryland without Ben Reeves in uniform was, again, I mean, that's just what Andy Shea does. I mean, he's just flat out, one of the top, top 3 coaches in the country. I mean, maybe he's the top guy, maybe he's 5, I don't know, but he just gets his team, he gets the best out of his team all the time. So there's no way they're going to overlook Bryant. This isn't about Bryant determining the outcome of this game. This is about Yale focusing on getting better, and Yale's going to have too much for Bryant here. They're going to win the faceoffs, I think. And Phil Hufford's doing pretty well for them in the goal based on that being a question mark going into the season. 22.5 goals. I don't know if Ben Reeves plays or not. Frankly, with a pulled hamstring, I wouldn't be surprised if he sits out another week. But Yale's proved that they can score without Ben Reeves in the lineup. And I think that Bryant will score some goals, but I'm going to take Yale and I'm going to take the over.
I think the worst decision that Andy Shea could make is playing Ben Reeves against the Bryant team this weekend. It's unnecessary.
Doesn't matter.
It does not matter. The only thing that matters, and we've talked about this before, is Yale playing in the Ivy League and doing well in the Ivy League games.
Yep, you're right.
And coming off of, I do think, though, that a Bryant team coming off of a loss to BU is going to put them in a position to perform better this weekend against Yale, but Yale's going to be too tough across the board. 22.5, though, is interesting. Bryant played a lot of zone against BU. You got to figure Yale has to prepare for that. It's going to slow the game down. I've got Yale -3, but I'm going to take the under on this one. Regardless of Reeves playing or not, I do think that the zone is going to slow the pace down, and it's going to put Bryant in a position to at least cover the under on this. But Yale still wins by 3 for sure. We're going out to Denver in this one. UNC, they are ranked number, holy smokes, where's my
7
number 7 versus number
1.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I'm great with numbers. Numbers and shapes, letters. I'm not that good.
But is Maryland number 1 too?
They're tied.
Oh, sorry. That's why I was so confused. I was like, wait a minute, my numbers are way off. Number 7, UNC goes to Denver, in, as we call the dentist office, to play number 1 Denver. Denver is favored by 2.5 goals here. The over-under is 22.5. Denver has had some serious success over UNC over the last few years. AT, what do you have here?
3 weeks ago, I would have said this was going to be the in-your-face game of the season. But Carolina has not got off to a great start, particularly offensively this year. Defensively, Hopkins explodes for 13 goals, which, let's face it, that may end up being a low number for Hopkins' offense as the season wears on. We're gonna find out. But I just don't like the way UNC is playing right now. I'm really looking forward to the battle at the X between Trevor Baptiste and Stephen Kelly. That's going to be really fun to watch. But I just don't think that Carolina has an offensive identity in 2017 yet. They will get it because Metz Bauer is arguably the best offensive coach in the country. They will get it. But I think it's too early in the season to fly to Denver and to play a team that they've really struggled against in the last 6 years to cover 2.5. And the fact that they're not getting it done offensively, I'm gonna take Denver and I'm gonna take the under, even though I hope Carolina blows them out, but I know they won't. So I got Denver in the under.
I like it. I've got Denver for sure. I do think it's going to be a much higher scoring game than 22.5, though. I'm going to take the over in this one. Trevor Baptiste is going to dominate the face-off X. Denver is going to dominate on all parts of the field. I just don't feel like UNC has it in right now. And this all stems back when you were talking about it. We all thought it was kind of like this weird score, but that Furman game for UNC, that 7-3, probably indicated some red flags for UNC.
Definitely.
And for me, going into a team like Denver at Denver, now if it was the opposite, I could see the under, and I could see UNC covering 2.5, but I just don't see it in Denver. So I'm taking Denver 2.5, and I'm taking the over in this one. Next up, you've got number 20 Duke. I wrote them all backwards, man. At Richmond, who's number 12. How many times in our lives are we going to see a Duke team that's not ranked higher than a Richmond team?
Right.
But number 12, Richmond, who was your candidate, was it a candidate for Coach of the Week? Might have been.
No, we got beat up by Petro for runner-up.
For one deal. But Dan Shamati was a former IYF Coach of the Week. But here, Duke and Richmond, this is a pick'em. It's a pick'em 22, but it's in Richmond. Does that make a difference, AT?
It does make a difference. I mean, listen, Richmond deserves to get picked in this game based on the fact that they beat them last year, based on what they've done this year, based on Duke losing to Air Force. But I look at Duke's bounce back performance against St. Joe's last week and going 16-3 after playing Denver really tough out in Denver the week before. And I see Duke winning the faceoffs in this game. And I see the fact that they exploded last week, although not against a team that's as defensively proficient as Richmond is. But the fact that it's a pick'em, Duke just has to win the game. And they lost last week to they lost last year to Richmond. And they're going to win the faceoffs. I'm going to take Duke. And I think the fact that Richmond is such a great defensive team and the numbers at 22, I like Duke in the under.
I like Duke here. I like Duke
It's
here.
so hard to not pick them.
It is. And Richmond's proven themselves as a team that can score, so I'm going to take the over in this one.
Yep.
But in terms of what Richmond has done over the last, it's really, really, really good. But now they're going to get a team that, albeit young, is probably going to win in a pick'em. If it wasn't a pick'em, I'd have a harder time, but I feel like this is an easy one with a pick'em with Duke. So I'm going to go with Duke as well. But I'm going to take the over. You took the under, I believe, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be the under. I think that you got two teams that can score. I think that you got a Duke team that's still trying to figure themselves out on the defensive end. I think you got a Richmond team that has figured themselves out. And it could be it could be the exact opposite of what we're talking about, but I'm going to take Duke just in pure picking. We've got number 10, Syracuse, in the Dome against number 9, UVA. UVA has 1 point, is laying 1 in this. The over-under in this one as well is 28 goals. We're talking speed, fast lacrosse. Is Ben Williams going to play for Syracuse? Is he hurt? Is he going to stay hurt for a long time? But this is an ACC game. This is a must-win for both teams. AT, what do you got?
I don't think Ben Williams is going to be at the top of his game in this game if he plays. My sense is that if he didn't play last week against Army, and that dictated the outcome, I'm sure he'll do everything he can to play in this game. And let's face it, if he doesn't play, to me, there's no chance for Syracuse to compete in this game if Ben Williams doesn't play. Their opportunity to win is connected to them winning faceoffs. I really believe that. I don't love their defensive personnel. I do think Leland's a great coach, and I think he's going to come out, and I think he's going to play some zone in this game, which is very un-Syracuse-like. But after watching what Penn did to Virginia at home last week by playing that, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Syracuse come out and try to slow the game down that way. But if they're not winning faceoffs, they're going to fall behind, and you can't play a zone when you fall behind if you're trying to win the game. And I think they're going to have to step out and put some pressure around the perimeter, and that's not going to bode well for them. And I just see Virginia coming back with a vengeance in this game. Even though it's up in the Carrier Dome, I do think part of playing in the Carrier Dome has lost its mystique a little bit. Sorry, Kark, you may disagree, but there's no question it's just not as scary. So I've got Virginia, and I've got the over.
I'm going to take Virginia in this one, too. I think that the face-off X is going to be dominated. Their face-off transition is going to dominate. We talked about that in terms of how Penn was able to stifle them a little bit. Syracuse, I would be shocked to see Syracuse play in a zone, but I could see them doing it. You've got to slow them down. The blueprint has been set by Penn moving forward. But does Syracuse take that path? Does Syracuse think that they can run with them? Because right now, I don't think they can. I think there's a lot of doubt in a Syracuse team right now with a loss to Army and a 1-goal win against Albany. I think that there's not a whole hell of a lot of confidence right now up in the Dome. And so for that reason, I'm taking UVA. And for that reason as well, I will take the under. I think UVA is going to score a lot of goals, but I don't think Hughes does. I don't think Hughes puts up enough to get 28 or over, but I could be wrong. We have one more game until we get to the game of the week and, of course, the Rock Bottom Bowl. We do have a Rock Bottom Bowl this week.
Yes.
The last game is Bellarmine at number 17, Ohio State. Ohio State favored by 3. The over-under here is 21. Real quick, AT, who do you think you got in this one?
Well, Ohio State's playing at Marquette on Friday, and then they come back and they play Bellarmine on Sunday at home. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of travel for Ohio State. They're going to win the game.
No, I think this is all there. It's like a play day thing, but they're considered the home team.
Like, let's all meet in Wisconsin and play a bunch of lacrosse games?
Exactly.
So painful. All right, well then, it doesn't change what I'm going to say. I still think Ohio State covers 3 goals, no problem. And while I think they'll be tired, 21, does Bellarmine score? I don't know if Bellarmine scores enough goals. I'm going to take Ohio State in the under.
I'm going to take Ohio State in the under as well. Big time games coming up for Ohio State. Coming out of this weekend 2-0 would be huge. So that I think they're going to be well prepared. I think this Bellarmine game, the second game, is going to be an interesting one because I do think that Bellarmine has the capability of knocking them off. But for the sake of confidence in my picks, I'm going to take Ohio State -3. I'm going to take the under as well. I don't think either team gets to a ton of points here. I see a 10-9-ish, or excuse me, it's a 10-7-ish game somewhere around there, which puts Ohio State -3 and keeps it right underneath that 21-goal cushion. Now, let's get to the game of the week. Number 1 versus number 4, Maryland in South Bend, 12 noon this Saturday. Maryland is favored by 1 goal. 22 is the over-under. What do you think, Harry T?
What a game. I mean, this is you look at Penn State, Penn as a potential game of the week game.
Got to look at UNC Denver.
UNC Richmond. Denver, although UNC coming off a little bit. Duke Richmond is definitely right there. This is a really tough game. I mean, the fact that they're going to play at Notre Dame, I think that's a really tough place to play for anyone. But Maryland has proved that they're willing to play fast. They're going to be a really tough team to match up with. But the reality is Jerry Burns' defense, they don't really need to win one-on-one matchups because they're so well-versed in play, as one group. And I think that they're going to slow Maryland down offensively for sure. I think P.J. Finley is going to do a great job at the X competing against Austin Henningsen and that crew. I give the edge and goal to Notre Dame with Shane Doss. I think that Maryland is going to struggle to cover Ryder Garnsey. And I think that Notre Dame is going to score some goals. And so even though Maryland is coming in as the higher-ranked team, I think that Notre Dame is going to find a way to win this game. And I think that they're going to be I think it's going to be a high-scoring game, which won't make Burnsy happy. But as long as they get the W, he doesn't really care. And I could see it being, 14-12 Notre Dame. And so I'm actually going to go with Notre Dame, and I'm going to go with the over in this game.
Wow. I'm going to go with Maryland.
I knew you would.
I'm going with Maryland. I'm going with the over as well.
I knew you would.
But I'm going to tell you that the kid Muller for Maryland is going to swallow up Ryder Garnsey.
No way.
That's a right-on-left matchup.
I'm going picking Ryder Garnsey as my in-your-face week 6.
Wow.
Week 5 player of the week.
It's a little premature, AT. Wait till you see this kid play defense. He's awesome. And from that standpoint, I think the most important thing for Maryland is the first 15 seconds of every single possession. Get the ball to number 1. You get the ball to him, everything else takes care of itself. He can feed, he can dodge, he can shoot. He can shoot off the dodge. He can shoot time and room. He can bully you around. He's always a threat off ball. He's a scary player. Get the ball to 1. Notre Dame, on the other hand, won't have an answer because the hardest thing to do is to play transition defense. And if they start fast in the first 10, 15 seconds of the possession, they're going to have a lot of success versus a Maryland team. They're going to dominate the faceoff X. Despite Notre Dame's success at the faceoff, there's no one that can stop with Henningsen right now. So expect him to play. This is a
although Connor Mackey ripped him last week against DL. Maybe not in the third quarter, but he ripped him in the first half.
Well, I feel like Henningsen's dealing with some potential injuries right now, but that shouldn't really matter. This is a big game. This is where they need him. Because this could determine home field advantage maybe later on when the committee comes down to it. So this is big. I do have Maryland by 1, and I do have the over in this one, which I believe is exactly the opposite of your pick.
I picked Notre Dame and the over. You picked Maryland.
And the over. Okay, great.
That's all right. You're good with shapes.
AT, talk to us. Last segment of the podcast or show, whichever you want to call it. Who is in the Rock Bottom Bowl this week?
Well, no, it's not UHart versus Jacksonville. They were runner-up.
They were runner-up. Oh, they're getting close. They're
Two
getting
programs
really
even
close.
more rock bottom than Hartford and Jacksonville right now are St. John's and Siena.
Oh, no.
That's going to be the first Rock Bottom Bowl.
It's
RB
not Dartmouth.
Square.
It's not Dartmouth.
It's not.
They won.
Listen, Dartmouth evaded it. If my boy Richie Loftus continues to play on game day, they may win more games than just this one. And so St. John's has struggled this year, and Siena has struggled this year. St. John's is 0-3. They've gotten blown out 3 times. And I love my boy Jason Miller, so hopefully he can find some answers there. So the Siena game is coming at an ideal time. Siena played Hobart really, really well. In their second game. I think they lost 16-15, something like that. Other than that, they've gotten blown out. But that shows that Siena has some life, and they are playing at home. And so given that the Rock Bottom Bowl has no lines and no over-under.
It's a pick'em.
It's a pick'em, and the over-under is infinity. It's a sideway 8. I am going to take Siena in the Rock Bottom.
Oh, great. Because I'm going to take St. John's. Yes. I'm very pumped. We have opposing picks on the Rock Bottom Bowl. I'm picking St. John's. I think this is where, and by the way, College Cross, if they're still listening to the show, if they ever listen to this show, they brought back Reverse Survivor. And if you don't know what Reverse Survivor is, check out their platform. Basically, it's the last team to win their first game of the season. That's what it is. And so I think that St. John's finally loses in the Reverse Survivor and gets their first win of the year before Siena does, and Siena stays in the loop to potentially win Reverse Survivor. I've got St. John's in the Rock Bottom Bowl. That is all for the show this week. As always, you can check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Check us all out. Check our friends out as well. LaxAllStars, of course, Lax Vegas Lines, who provides the lines. Thank you very, very much for doing that. Sisu Mouthpieces, of course, they're our sponsor. Witness Evolution, really cool to see how much the kids are enjoying a mouthpiece for that matter. Tune in next week. We're going to dial in the show. We're going to get this under an hour, about 20 minutes over. That's all right. We're going to dial in the show a little bit better. But tune in next Wednesday, 9 a.m. for the live show. Until then, enjoy the lacrosse this weekend. We'll see you.